She cradled the coffee mug with both hands, as if the warmth of the ceramic could fill the hollow space growing inside her. There were no tears, no outbursts, just the weight of a truth that landed like a stone in the still lake of her life. The message on her husband's phone wasn't meant for her, but the glowing screen betrayed him with brutal clarity. "You come in tonight, love? I miss you." The number wasn't saved, but the tone was intimate, careless, as if the betrayal had become routine. Olivia closed her eyes for a moment, and the world seemed to spin more slowly. It wasn't just the message, it was what it represented, the exposed crack in a castle she'd built with such care, brick by brick, over 15 years. The coffee cooled between her fingers, and she felt her heart pulse with a pain she couldn't name, not anger, not sadness, but something deeper, as if the very foundation of who she was had been shaken. Still, Olivia didn't move. She didn't hurl the phone against the wall or rush to confront James. She just breathed deeply, letting the air fill her lungs until it almost hurt, and tucked the truth away like a loaded gun. The house was quiet, save for the ticking of the wall clock James had insisted on buying at a flea market in Asheville. He said the sound reminded him of his childhood, but now, to Olivia, each tick seemed to mark the time she'd wasted believing in a lie. She rose from the kitchen table, her navy dress chosen for a dinner with friends, still pristine as if nothing had happened. At 38, she looked younger, with her dark hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders and hazel eyes that always seemed to hold more than they revealed. Olivia was the CEO of a tech startup in Seattle, one of those ventures that started small and, thanks to her vision, was now worth millions. She'd built it from nothing, through sleepless nights, endless meetings, and a determination some mistook for coldness. But it wasn't coldness. It was strength, the kind born from knowing the world doesn't forgive weakness. James, on the other hand, was her opposite. At 45, he still leaned on the easy charm of someone who'd always been the favorite wherever he went. A successful lawyer with an office in downtown Seattle, he had a way of speaking that made anyone feel important, a gift Olivia once admired, but now, in the light of betrayal, saw as a tool for manipulation. They'd met at a friend's party in a Belltown loft, back when she was a systems analyst trying to launch her first business idea. James won her over with stories of his travels, promises of unwavering support, and a smile that seemed to promise the world. For years he was the perfect partner, attentive, present, the man who made her laugh even on the toughest days. But the phone message revealed what Olivia hadn't wanted to see. James wasn't the safe harbor she'd imagined. He was just a man, with ordinary desires, unable to resist the lure of a younger woman. Olivia left the phone on the table, exactly where she'd found it, and stepped onto the balcony of their apartment. The Seattle skyline at night was a sea of lights, with the Space Needle glowing in the distance like a beacon. She loved this city, its hustle, its grit, the way it challenged her to be more every day. And now, staring at the horizon, Olivia felt something new stirring within her. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a cold clarity, like the first sip of iced water on a hot morning. She wouldn't crumble. She wouldn't call her friends, cry on someone's shoulder, or post cryptic messages on social media. Olivia was practical, methodical, a woman who turned problems into solutions. And this betrayal, as much as it hurt, would be just another problem to solve. That night, while James slept in the bedroom, oblivious to the storm he'd unleashed, Olivia opened her laptop and began her investigation. It wasn't impulsive, driven by jealousy or desperation. It was meticulous, like everything she did. First, she checked the message history on his phone, which he never bothered to delete. Too confident in his own discretion, there were exchanges with a woman named Ava, someone who, from the tone, seemed young, confident, maybe a little spoiled. The messages were full of pet names, plans for meetups at trendy restaurants, and even a mention of a weekend in Napa Valley. Olivia read them with the same calm she brought to financial reports, noting dates, times, and places. Then she accessed James's credit card statements. He'd never changed the banking app password, and she knew exactly where to look. Expensive dinners, gifts, a reservation at a boutique hotel in the Willamette Valley. Each line told a story Olivia didn't want to believe, but couldn't ignore. The next morning, James left early for his office, as usual, with a quick kiss on her forehead, and a promise to be back for dinner. She smiled as if nothing had changed, but the moment the door closed, she got to work. She called a trusted friend, a lawyer specializing in tech, and asked how to trace a phone number without raising suspicion. It wasn't hard, not for someone with her resources. Within hours, she learned that Ava was Ava Bennett, 26, a social media influencer with thousands of followers, known for posting photos at Pacific Coast beaches and high-end events. Olivia spent hours studying Ava's profile, every photo, every caption, every detail. There was no hatred in her eyes, just a cold curiosity, like she was sizing up an opponent before a major deal. What followed was a plan, not one fueled by blind vengeance, but by a need for justice, for balance. Olivia knew confronting James directly would be pointless. He'd deny, lie, maybe even try to manipulate her with promises of change, and she didn't want that. She wanted something bigger, something that would show him and herself that she was stronger than his lies. So she began to move the pieces. First, she discovered Ava worked as a freelancer, creating content for fashion and lifestyle brands. With her network, Olivia made a call to a partner agency and suggested hiring Ava for a short-term project. The young woman, eager for the opportunity, accepted immediately, unaware that the company behind it belonged to the wife her lover had betrayed. Meanwhile, Olivia watched James with an attention he never noticed. She saw the small signs, the way he checked his phone more often, the excuses to leave the office early, the disinterest in the conversations that once connected them. Each detail was a knife, but Olivia didn't let the pain take over. She channeled it into the plan, the strategy, and slowly she began to feel something new, a lightness, as if taking control of the situation was reclaiming control of herself. Weeks passed, and Olivia's plan took shape. She invited James to a gala, a charity event hosted by her company, where she'd be honored as one of the most influential women in tech. He accepted, of course, always eager to flaunt his charm at high-profile events. What he didn't know was that Ava would be there too, hired to cover the event as an influencer. Olivia had planned it all with precision, the table where they'd sit, the people around them, even the exact moment the truth would surface. There would be no shouting, no scenes, just the truth, revealed with the elegance of someone who knew silence could be more devastating than words. The night of the charity gala arrived like a storm only Olivia could foresee. The ballroom at a downtown Seattle hotel shimmered with crystal chandeliers casting delicate prisms of light, creating an air of sophistication the city knew how to deliver. Round tables draped in crisp white linens, adorned with white orchid centerpieces and clinking wine glasses, filled the space. Olivia, in a sleek black silk gown that hugged her curves with understated elegance, moved through the room with the grace of a born leader. Her smile was warm, but her eyes held an intensity few noticed, as if she saw beyond the small talk and rehearsed laughter, straight to the heart of what was coming. James was at her side, impeccable in a navy suit, greeting colleagues and clients with the charm that had once been his greatest asset, but now felt like a mask about to slip. Olivia observed everything with a calm that bordered on otherworldly. She mingled with guests, exchanged pleasantries with sponsors, and posed for photos with the ease of someone who owned the stage. But inside, every step was calculated, every gesture rehearsed. She knew Ava was there, somewhere in the room, likely perfecting the angle for a selfie to capture the event's glamour. Olivia had seen her arrive, in a red dress that drew too much attention, blonde hair loose, and a smile brimming with confidence. Ava had no idea she was being watched, not with admiration, but by eyes that knew every detail of her betrayal. Olivia didn't feel hatred, not exactly. It was something sharper, colder, a determination to rewrite the narrative James had tried to force on her. The main table, where Olivia and James sat, was a microcosm of power and influence. There was a retired congressman, a journalist known for her biting columns, the owner of a retail chain, and a couple of international investors Olivia had won over with her tech vision. The conversation flowed between politics, economics, and the challenges of innovation, but Olivia seemed to exist on another plane, listening just enough to keep up appearances. James, meanwhile, was in his element, telling anecdotes and making everyone laugh with stories from his courtroom days. He'd always been a natural storyteller, turning even the most mundane case into an epic saga. But Olivia knew that tonight, the story that mattered would be told by her. As the dinner was served, grilled salmon with herb risotto and a sauce that smelled of thyme, Olivia noticed the moment Ava approached the table. The young woman, holding a tablet, seemed to be jotting down notes, likely for her social media posts. Olivia watched her from the corner of her eye, noting the way she moved, confident but with a hint of unease, as if she knew she was out of her depth. James didn't see her at first, too busy answering the congressman's question about tax reform. But Olivia knew the encounter was near, and her heart beat with a mix of adrenaline and serenity, like she was about to close the biggest deal of her career. The MC took the stage, a middle-aged man with a warm, resonant voice, and announced the evening's main event, the recognition of women transforming the tech industry. Olivia was called to the podium, and the room erupted in applause. She stood, smoothing her gown with a subtle gesture, and walked to the microphone with the poise of someone who carried 1,000 victories and no visible defeats. Her speech was brief but powerful, touching on resilience, innovation, and the importance of paving the way for other women. Every word was chosen with care, not just to inspire, but to set the stage for what was to come. She thanked her team, her partners, and with a smile that seemed genuine, acknowledged her family's support, looking directly at James. He smiled back, unaware of what that look meant. When she returned to the table, Olivia felt the moment drawing closer. She'd planned it with the precision of a Swiss watch. During dessert, a chocolate tart with raspberry coulis that no one at the table seemed to eat, she excused herself to make a brief announcement. The room fell silent, all eyes on her, curious. Olivia raised a glass of champagne, the golden liquid catching the chandelier light, and spoke with a calm, commanding voice that echoed authority. "I'd like to take this opportunity to share some news about our company," she said, pausing to ensure every ear was tuned in. "We're launching a new campaign, blending technology and digital influence, and for that, we've hired a talented young woman, someone many of you know from social media." She gestured for Ava to approach, and the young woman, surprised but clearly flattered, walked to the main table. James's face changed instantly. Olivia saw the exact moment he recognized her, the tension in his jaw, the glint of panic in his eyes, the way he gripped his napkin tightly. Ava, oblivious to the drama, smiled at the guests as if this were the peak of her career. Olivia continued, her voice smooth as a breeze but sharp as a blade. "Ava Bennett will be the face of this campaign, and I'm sure she'll bring great visibility to our brand. But before we move on, I want to share something personal, because I believe transparency is the foundation of success." The room was so quiet that a dropped fork would have echoed like thunder. Olivia picked up her phone, strategically placed by her plate, and opened a folder of files she'd meticulously prepared. "Tonight, as we celebrate achievements, we must also face the truths that challenge us," she said, projecting her phone's screen onto a monitor beside the stage, a feature she'd arranged with the IT team. The image was a screenshot of a text conversation, the same message Olivia had read weeks ago. "You coming tonight, love? I miss you." Ava's number was highlighted, along with James's flirty, promise-filled reply. The room held its breath, and Olivia continued, her tone unchanged. "I want to thank my husband, James, for teaching me that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the deepest disappointments." James tried to stand, his face flushed, but the weight of the stairs around him pinned him to his seat. Ava, now realizing what was happening, let her tablet slip from her hands, the clatter echoing in the silence. Olivia didn't look at either of them directly. Instead, she addressed the crowd. "This company was built on truth, hard work, and the belief that we can turn pain into purpose. Tonight I announce that I'll be leading our international expansion, and I'll make it clear that I carry only what is true." The applause started hesitantly, but grew in strength as if the room recognized not just her courage, but her ability to turn betrayal into a moment of power. Olivia sat back down, her face serene, as if she'd just presented a quarterly report. James, still stunned, tried to whisper something, but she raised a hand, a small gesture that said everything. "Not now." Ava, humiliated, hurried out of the room, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Olivia sipped her champagne, the effervescence sharp against her tongue, and for the first time in weeks her heart felt lighter. That night, as the guests continued the party, oblivious to the personal earthquake that had just occurred, Olivia went home alone. James tried to follow, but she was firm. "You can stay at the office tonight. We'll talk about the divorce tomorrow." He didn't argue. There was no way to. Olivia locked the apartment door, slipped off her heels, and walked barefoot to the balcony, where the city still glowed with its restless lights. She didn't feel triumph, not exactly. What she felt was deeper, the certainty that by exposing the truth, she'd reclaimed something James could never take, her dignity. In the days that followed, Olivia threw herself into work with renewed energy. The campaign with Ava was cancelled, and the young woman, embarrassed, vanished from social media for weeks. James tried to explain himself, sending long, justification-filled texts, but Olivia didn't respond. She hired one of Seattle's best divorce lawyers and began the process with the same efficiency she brought to her company. There was no room for regrets or second chances. She knew she deserved more, not just from a partner but from herself. While organizing divorce papers, Olivia began planning her next chapter. The company's international expansion was more than a campaign promise. It was a chance to start anew, to explore new horizons. She spent nights reviewing proposals, talking to investors in London and New York, and for the first time in years, felt truly free. Not the freedom of being single, but the freedom of not carrying someone else's lies. One evening, while sipping wine alone at home, Olivia got a call from an old friend, Daniel, an architect she'd met years ago at a networking event. He was in Seattle for a project and suggested coffee. Olivia hesitated but agreed. Not because she was looking for love, but because she felt ready to open space for new connections, new possibilities. The coffee was light, full of laughter and stories, and for the first time in months, Olivia felt she could be herself. No armor, no strategies. The coffee with Daniel was like opening a window in a house that had been closed for too long. It wasn't a date, nor a promise of anything more than easy conversation, but for Olivia, it was a reminder that the world still existed beyond the walls she'd built to protect herself. Sitting in a cozy Capitol Hill cafe, with walls covered in vibrant local art and the scent of freshly ground coffee, she listened to Daniel talk about his architectural projects with a passion that made her smile genuinely for the first time in weeks. He was different from James, not in charm, which James had in spades, but in authenticity. Daniel spoke with his hands, gesturing as if sketching the future in the air, his eyes bright with a sincerity Olivia had almost forgotten existed. She wasn't ready for anything beyond that moment, but something in his easy laughter reignited a spark she didn't know she still carried. Life moved at a relentless pace. Olivia tackled the divorce with the same precision she applied to corporate deals. Her lawyer, a sharp woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a calm confidence, assured her the settlement would be fair. James, surprisingly, didn't fight much. Perhaps the public exposure at the gala had disarmed him, or maybe he knew there was no fixing what he'd broken. Olivia didn't want a war, just freedom. She let go of petty disputes over assets. The Belltown apartment would be hers, but she let James keep the cabin in the San Juan Islands, a place now tainted with memories of unkept promises. Each signature on the divorce papers lifted a weight from her shoulders, and slowly, Olivia felt the air flowing back into her life. At work, she was more focused than ever. The international expansion announced at the gala wasn't just a publicity move to mask her personal drama. It was real, ambitious, and demanded everything she had. Olivia spent hours on calls with teams in London, New York, and Singapore, refining strategies, reviewing contracts, and ensuring every detail aligned with her vision. The company, which began as a scribbled idea in a notebook during her days as a systems analyst, was now on the verge of becoming a global benchmark. And deep down, Olivia knew this was her true revenge, not humiliating James or Ava, but proving beyond doubt that she was bigger than any betrayal. Still, the betrayal left scars. In the quietest nights, when the apartment felt too big for one person, Olivia found herself revisiting memories she'd rather forget. She recalled trips with James, impromptu dinners in their kitchen, promises whispered during rainy Seattle evenings. It wasn't longing exactly, but a kind of mourning for what could have been. She didn't cry. Olivia was never one for tears, but sometimes she felt an emptiness she couldn't explain. In those moments she'd get up, turn on the living room light and start working, as if motion could fill the space James left behind. And in a way, it did. Every email sent, every plan made, every goal achieved was an affirmation that she didn't need him to be whole. Seattle, with its restless energy and contrasts, seemed to mirror Olivia. Walking through Pike Place Market, past fish vendors and flower stalls, she felt a deep connection to the city. It was here, amid hurried coffee runs and late-night coding sessions, that she'd built her life. And now, it was here she was rebuilding it. One day, while waiting at a crosswalk, she saw a billboard for a jewelry brand Ava had endorsed before the scandal. The young woman's flawless, smiling face seemed to mock her from above. Olivia took a deep breath and looked away. She didn't feel anger. Ava, in the end, was just a pawn in James's game, as much a victim of his manipulations as Olivia had once been. But fate, as it often does, had its own plans. One morning, while reviewing a presentation at the office, her assistant Mia knocked on the door with a hesitant look. "Someone wants to see you," she said, handing over a business card. It was James. He'd requested a meeting, claiming it was about professional matters. Olivia hesitated, but curiosity, or perhaps the need to close that chapter for good, won out. She agreed to meet him, but on her terms, in the glass-walled boardroom atop her building, where she felt in command. James walked in with his usual charm, but something was different. His suit was impeccable, as always, but his eyes carried a weight Olivia had never seen. He sat, adjusting his tie like a shield, and began to speak. He was leaving the law firm, where he'd worked for years. The gala exposure, though not headline news, had spread like a whisper among his colleagues and clients. The trust he'd built was shaken, and he needed a fresh start. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "But I'm here because your company is hiring, and I know I can contribute." Olivia stared at him, her gaze steady, unflinching. It was almost comical, the irony of fate. James, the man who betrayed her, who lied for months, now sat before her, asking for a job at the company she'd built with her own sweat. For a moment she imagined saying no, sending him away with the same coldness he'd shown her. But then something shifted. Not pity, not weakness. Power. The power to decide, to control the narrative. "Send your resume to HR," she said, her voice neutral, as if speaking to a stranger. "We'll evaluate it like any other candidate." James looked relieved but confused, as if expecting an outburst or a dramatic reconciliation. Olivia gave him neither. She stood, signaling the meeting was over, and returned to her work as if nothing had happened. But inside, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She wouldn't hire James, not out of spite, but because he didn't fit the team she was building. Her company valued integrity, something he clearly lacked, and by letting him think he had a chance, Olivia knew she was teaching him a subtler, more lasting lesson. The world he'd tried to manipulate now belonged to her. The months that followed were transformative. Olivia traveled to London to close partnerships, and each meeting was a victory. She walked the city streets, its historic buildings and cosmopolitan energy making her feel more alive than ever. During one trip, she met a mentor, a British executive named Victoria, who invited her to dinner. Over glasses of red wine and talks about leadership, Victoria said something that stuck with Olivia. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone but yourself, and from what I see, you already have." Those words became a mantra, guiding Olivia back to the core of who she was. Back in Seattle, Olivia began investing in personal projects. She enrolled in a creative writing workshop, something she'd always wanted to try but never had time for. She wrote at night, on her balcony, with the city sparkling below. Her stories were about women like her, strong, broken, rebuilt. And slowly she realized she was writing not just to process the past, but to imagine the future. Daniel appeared more often, always with a casual invitation. A movie, a dinner, a walk along Alki Beach. Olivia didn't call him a boyfriend or even a love interest. He was simply a presence, someone who made her laugh and asked for nothing more than she was willing to give. One night, While organizing her home office, Olivia found an old photo of her and James, taken at a New Year's Eve party on the Seattle waterfront. They were smiling, arms around each other, with the Puget Sound behind them and fireworks lighting the sky. For a moment she felt the weight of that memory, but then she tucked the photo into a box with other things that no longer defined her. It wasn't about forgetting, but about choosing what to carry. And Olivia chose to carry only what made her stronger. This was what she did, built futures, and now more than ever she was building her own. Meanwhile, James faded from view. After their boardroom meeting, he sent his resume as she'd suggested, but she handed the task to HR with clear instructions to treat him like any candidate. His resume, though impressive in experience, didn't fit the profile her company sought. Olivia didn't need to say no herself. The decision came from the team based on objective criteria, and she simply signed the standard rejection letter. There was no petty satisfaction in it, just the certainty that the world followed its own rules, and James, for the first time, was subject to them. She heard through mutual friends that he was struggling to start a new law practice, his reputation dented by the gala's whispers. Olivia felt no pity but no joy either. James was becoming a footnote in her story. Daniel, on the other hand, kept showing up, always with the ease of someone who didn't push. He invited her to simple outings, an art exhibit at the Seattle Art Museum, a jazz show in a tucked-away Pioneer Square bar, a picnic in Discovery Park. Olivia enjoyed his company, not because he filled a void, but because he seemed to understand her without demanding explanations. During one walk through the park, with the sun filtering through the trees and the distant hum of ferries on the Sound, Daniel asked casually, "Ever thought about writing a book?" Olivia laughed, caught off guard, but he pressed on, his tone serious when it mattered. "You've got something to say, Olivia. Something a lot of people need to hear." She didn't answer right away, but the idea lingered, like a seed not yet ready to sprout. Life didn't slow down. A crisis erupted when a key London partner threatened to pull out of a contract, citing strategic differences. Olivia flew to the UK almost immediately, determined to fix it. The meetings were long, tense, filled with corporate jargon and oversized egos, but Olivia navigated them with the same skills she'd used to expose James. She listened, asked precise questions, presented data no one could dispute. In the end, she not only saved the contract but secured a larger investment, something even her team thought impossible. Back at her hotel, exhausted but victorious, she looked in the mirror and saw a woman she didn't fully recognize. Not the Olivia who'd silently grieved a betrayal, but a stronger, surer version, as if each battle was carving her into something new. Back in Seattle, Olivia decided it was time to do something for herself, beyond work and writing. She signed up for ballroom dance classes, something she'd always wanted to try, but James had dismissed as not her thing. The classes, held in a small studio in Ballard, were a mix of laughter, stumbles, and a freedom she didn't know she needed. She danced with different partners each week, learning to trust the rhythm, the movement, the other person. It was as if, in spinning across the floor, she was unlearning the binds of her past. One night, after a particularly fun class, she caught herself laughing loudly, something she hadn't done in months. The instructor, a man with curly hair and an infectious smile, teased, "You dance like you're telling a story." Olivia just smiled, but she thought, maybe I am. The writing workshop neared its end, and the instructor proposed a final project, a short novella capturing a personal journey. Olivia wrote about a woman who, after a great loss, discovered that true strength wasn't in defeating others, but in rebuilding herself. She wrote with an intensity that startled her, the words flowing as if they'd been waiting years to escape. When she presented it in the final class, the room fell silent, and the instructor, tears in her eyes, said, "This isn't just a story, it's a truth." Olivia's heart tightened, not from sadness, but from a fullness she couldn't name. Though fictional, the novella mirrored her own journey. Writing it veiled in fiction let Olivia see her story clearly. She wasn't just the betrayed wife, the successful CEO, the writing student, or the novice dancer. She was all of these, and more, a sum of parts that didn't fit perfectly but formed something unique. When the workshop ended, the instructor urged her to submit the manuscript to a publisher. Olivia laughed, saying it was just a hobby, but the idea, like Daniel's suggestion, lingered in her mind. One night, sipping tea on her balcony, Olivia got a text from Daniel. He was back in Seattle and wondered if she'd join him for dinner. This time she didn't hesitate. They chose a small restaurant in Queen Anne with outdoor tables and soft lights strung in the trees. The conversation flowed as always, but there was a new electricity in the air, one Olivia couldn't ignore. Daniel talked about a project he was developing, a cultural space in downtown Seattle focused on local artists. He asked if Olivia wanted to collaborate, bringing her tech expertise to create an interactive experience. She said she'd think about it, but deep down she knew she'd say yes. Not for him, but for herself, for the chance to create something new, something that tied her to the city she loved. When she got home, Olivia sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and began revising her novella. For the first time, she considered publishing it, not to prove anything, but because she felt her words could reach other women, other lives. She imagined her story in the hands of someone who, like her, needed a reminder that pain isn't the end, just a chapter. And as she typed, with Seattle glowing outside, Olivia felt a peace that came from within, the peace of knowing the greatest victory was staying true to herself. The decision to revise her novella brought Olivia a clarity she hadn't expected. Sitting at her dining table, laptop open, the city humming outside, she felt each line was more than a creative exercise. It was a declaration of independence. The words that were once a refuge now took on a sense of purpose, as if by writing them, Olivia was rewriting not just her story, but how she saw herself. She spent nights tweaking paragraphs, choosing each verb with the care of someone who knew a single word could change everything. The process was solitary but not lonely. It was a solitude that filled her, as if she were finally in conversation with herself, no intermediaries needed. The city, with its unyielding lights, seemed to witness this rebirth, and Olivia, gazing at the Space Needle's glow, felt she was on the right path, even if she didn't know exactly where it led. The project with Daniel began to take shape. The cultural space he envisioned in downtown Seattle was ambitious, a place where local artists could showcase their work, enhanced by technology that made the experience immersive. Olivia, with her expertise, proposed an interactive platform using augmented reality and digital storytelling to let visitors explore the stories behind each piece. Daniel was thrilled, and they spent hours hashing out details, sketching ideas on napkins, and laughing at how their different visions complemented each other. It wasn't a romance, not yet, but a partnership that made Olivia feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. Daniel, with his quiet energy and ability to listen, was a welcome contrast to the chaos James had left behind. Meanwhile, the company kept growing. The international expansion, once a bold plan, was now a tangible reality. Olivia closed deals with 2 major firms in New York, and talks with Singapore moved toward opening a local office. She led with an energy that seemed boundless, but was rooted in a specific place. The need to prove to herself she could go beyond what anyone, including herself, had imagined. In a meeting with her team, discussing the next quarter's strategy, one director, an older man who'd always quietly admired her, said, "Olivia, you don't just run this company. You are this company." She smiled, thanking him with her usual modesty, but his words echoed inside her like a truth she was still learning to embrace. Ballroom dancing, which started as a whim, became a passion. Olivia attended classes twice a week, and each session was a small revolution. She learned to move with grace, to trust her partner, to let her body speak when her mind was overwhelmed. The Ballard studio, with its mirrored walls and Latin music, was a world apart, where she didn't need to be the CEO, the writer, or the betrayed wife. Just Olivia, spinning to a tango or laughing at a misstep in salsa. The instructor, Javier, noticed her progress and with his playful grin said, "You dance like you're writing a love letter to yourself." Olivia laughed, but deep down she knew he was right. Each step, each turn, was an affirmation of her existence, her ability to find joy after everything. One warm Seattle evening, after a lively class, Olivia decided to walk home despite the distance. The streets of Ballard were alive, couples strolling, friends laughing loudly, the scent of fish and chips wafting from a nearby diner. She walked slowly, soaking in the sounds and colors, feeling part of something bigger. Then she got an unexpected text. It was from Ava, the young woman who'd been at the center of her life's biggest upheaval. The message was short, almost shy. "Olivia, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to apologize. I didn't know everything. I'm sorry." Olivia stopped on the sidewalk, her phone's glow lighting her face in the dusk. For a moment, she considered ignoring it, letting the past stay buried. But something made her respond. "You don't owe me anything, Ava. Take care of yourself." The reply was simple, but carried the weight of a choice. To let go of resentment, to refuse to let pain define her. That brief exchange with Ava sparked a new reflection. Olivia realized that over the months she'd cast James as the villain, but Ava was just a piece in his game. Young, perhaps naive, certainly manipulated. There was no room for hatred in her heart, not because she was saintly, but because hatred was a burden she refused to carry. That short text exchange was like closing a door left slightly ajar, letting Olivia move forward with even greater lightness. The project with Daniel gained momentum. They secured funding from a cultural foundation and began transforming an old downtown warehouse into a vibrant space. The walls, covered in murals by artists from local communities, told stories of resilience, love, and struggle. Olivia's interactive platform, with augmented reality and digital narratives, was the project's heart, connecting each piece to a voice, a story, a soul. During one of the final meetings before the opening, Daniel showed her a prototype of her platform. It was simple but powerful, an interactive screen that brought each artist's story to life with videos, audio, and animations that felt almost magical. As the team applauded, Daniel looked at Olivia and said, "This is more yours than mine." She laughed, shaking her head, but felt a wave of gratitude for being there, building something that wasn't just a job, but an extension of who she was becoming. The cultural space's opening captured Seattle's spirit, vibrant, chaotic, alive. The warehouse was packed with artists, journalists, locals, and curious visitors, drawn by the promise of something unique. Olivia, in a deep green dress that caught the light, moved through the space with the ease of someone who knew exactly where she stood. Daniel, at her side, introduced the artists with an enthusiasm that made everyone smile, and during a quiet moment, as they sipped sparkling wine, he leaned in and said, "You know this is more yours than mine, right?" Olivia laughed, denying it. But his earnest look made her heart race. It wasn't love, not yet, but something growing slowly with deep roots like a tree needing time to take hold. That same week, an unexpected call brought a new weight to Olivia's heart. It was her mother, Margaret, who lived in Tacoma and rarely called without reason. Her voice, usually so steady, trembled with emotion. "I read your novella, sweetheart," she said, after a heavy pause. "You didn't tell me, but a friend shared the draft. I had no idea you carried so much inside you." Olivia was speechless, surprised and a bit embarrassed for not sharing it herself. Margaret continued, "You've always been strong since you were little, but reading your words, it showed me how much you've faced, how much you've grown. I'm so proud." Olivia felt a lump in her throat, a rare occurrence. She thanked her, voice shaky, and promised to visit that weekend. Hanging up, she stared at her phone, feeling the weight and lightness of that moment. Her mother, her rock, now saw her not just as a daughter, but as a woman who'd turned pain into art. Work remained demanding, but Olivia had learned to balance it with moments of rest. The dance classes, once a curiosity, were now a celebration of her freedom. She went to the Ballard studio twice a week, moving to tangos and salsas with a lightness she didn't know she had. Javier, the instructor, saw her progress and teased, "You dance like you're writing a love letter to yourself." Olivia laughed, but she knew he was right. Each step, each spin was a claim to her existence, her ability to find joy despite everything. When Javier invited her to perform in the studio's year-end showcase, Olivia hesitated, but agreed. "You've faced much tougher things than a stage," he said, and she knew he was right. The book's publication loomed, and the publisher scheduled the launch at a bookstore in Bellevue, a sleek, modern space that matched Olivia's energy. She spent weeks preparing not just for the event, but for what it meant. Writing the novella had been cathartic. Publishing it was an act of courage, vulnerability, and surrender. On the day, she faced a larger crowd than expected, writing classmates, work colleagues, Daniel, artists from the cultural project, and strangers who'd heard about the book. She read a passage, her voice steady but brimming with emotion, and when she finished, the applause was so strong she had to take a deep breath to stay composed. Afterward, she signed copies, talked to readers, and heard stories from women who saw themselves in her words. One, a young woman about 25, said through tears, "Your book made me believe I can overcome anything. Thank you." Olivia smiled, but inside felt that every step, the pain, the betrayal, the rebuilding, was worth it. After the event, Daniel invited her for a late coffee at a nearby diner, a quintessential Seattle ritual she couldn't refuse. Sitting by the window, the smell of fresh bread in the air, they talked about the future, the book, the cultural space, life. Daniel, with his disarming sincerity, said, "You're one of the most incredible people I've ever met, Olivia. Not because of your success, but because of who you are when no one's watching." She looked at him, startled by the weight of his words, and for the first time didn't look away. "You're not so bad yourself, you know," she replied, her smile saying more than her words. That night, as he walked her to her building, Olivia held his hand for a moment, a small gesture that felt like the start of something new. The months that followed were about settling in. The book became a quiet phenomenon, not just in Seattle, but across other US cities. Olivia was invited to speak at events, give interviews, and even attend a literary festival in San Francisco, where she spoke to a room of women seeking meaning in their pain. The company kept growing, with the Singapore office finally open, and Olivia led with a confidence that was no longer about proving anything, but about living her truth. Dance remained part of her life, and she performed in the studio's showcase, laughing at her mistakes, but feeling a joy that didn't depend on perfection. Daniel became a steady presence, not a necessity, but a choice. They didn't label what they had, but Olivia knew that with him, she could be herself. No masks, no strategies. The true closure came unexpectedly. One day, while sorting papers in her office, Olivia found an old letter she'd written years ago in the early months of her marriage to James. It was a list of dreams: travel the world, start her own company, write a book, learn to dance. She read each item with a bittersweet smile, realizing she'd achieved nearly all of them, not because of James, but despite him. The letter was a reminder of who she'd always been, a woman with big dreams, with a strength she didn't fully know back then. She kept the letter, not in the box of the past, but in a drawer with things that still mattered, things that were part of her. That night, Olivia returned to her balcony, gazing at the city that never slept. Seattle, with its lights and contrasts, was more than a backdrop. It was a witness to her journey. She thought of all she'd been through, the betrayal that made her question her strength, the revenge that wasn't about destruction, but about reclaiming her dignity, the rebirth that led her to write, dance, lead, love. Each step had brought her here, to this woman who now looked at the horizon with the certainty that she didn't need anyone to be whole. The real victory wasn't in defeating James or Ava, but in building a life that made her feel alive, complete, free. And as the city glowed like a sea of possibilities, Olivia closed her eyes and let a simple truth envelop her. Some storms don't come to destroy you. They come to clear the path. What did you think of the story? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. Subscribe to get our stories first. Until next time.